The Iron Sword is odd. Iron Sword. I never made this weapon. Ever. Even though I'm a recent convert to a sword main, with the Miss Walker being as juicy and wonderful as it is, probably my personal favorite weapon, I still don't really make the Iron Sword, and nor do I make the Black Metal Sword. I go bronze, silver, Miss Walker. Now I use other things, and I dabble in other skills. I am a sword main, not a sword only. But I can't help but look at the Iron Sword right now and see that it needs a little help. It needs a little help right now. So, you look at the Iron Sword, quality 4, 73 pierce, slash. But, you can bring a sledge, iron pickaxe, probably an iron mason buckler to deal with golems, maybe an iron sledge, or you could just bring Stagbreaker up into the mountains. You sledge bonk the side of the mountain at 120 meters or above. If you see the too hard message, if there's no obsidian around, that means you got silver under there, and you can mine it up, get to smelting, get your early silver sword, and the silver sword just absolutely outclasses the iron sword, quality 4, right away at quality 1, outclassed. And so you have this situation where the iron sword kind of doesn't really have a use. Yeah, it's technically better against, like, A-bombs than the bronze sword, sure, you know, but as a sword main, I was handling A-bombs no problem with the bronze sword, and so it was really not an issue. Of course, once you get up to early silver, silver sword handles A-bombs even better, and it really isn't. Well, you aren't really encountering too many A-bombs in the mountains, are you? So, very, very unlikely niche gain of use. Yeah, not very good there. Also, sure, it's better versus wolves than the bronze sword, but it's not better versus wolves than, say, bow and at gear. You got your range combo and your staggering there. You're going to be one-shotting wolves from range, or just middle mousing them and then poke with the at gear, even the bronze at gear. The niche is just better. You're just going to be tapping wolves and destroying them and poking them and spin to winning them before they even really get into biting range, which the iron sword excels at. And then even then, you can just go make your silver sword at that point. And so we have a interesting conundrum where I think the iron sword should be kind of buffed. Really, I think it should be changed. I think it should be made into a flaming sword. And I know we probably have a flaming sword coming in the Ashlands. However, I think having a swamp tier effectiveness of a flaming sword, maybe made with some Surling trophies, would be very good, and it would encourage some choice making between silver sword and flaming sword, because flaming sword fire doesn't get taken into account for staggering. It's just DPS and elemental weakness benefits, which can be very good. You can probably bring it against locks, that would be cool. A lot of DPS there. Groves, that would be sick. Bring it into the plains. You know, a lot of, Mode Air, the DPS in Mode Air. That would be good, she's weak to fire. Like, there would be a lot of interesting shenanigans where it's like, okay, especially in co-op, like, bring this fire sword. Really nice DPS. People can just stack fire damage on top, no problem. Really cool. Just having that mid-game fire option better than a fire arrow would be pretty sick. And it would be so effective versus A-bombs that I would actually consider, hey, I have this iron sword here. Even though I have silver sword, I have this flaming iron sword here. When I make a return journey to the swamp for iron, if not for plains gear then Mistlands gear, well, I think I know what I'm going to deal with the A-bombs with. Maybe a little iron sword, flaming. Yes, I think that would be cool. And I also think this sort of approach to gear also helps out missing tier gear. So missing tiers, right now we're missing the biggest thing I think people recognize is mountain tier at gear. Where's the mountain tier at gear? Well, they say, devs and other people will say, well, we want you to try out, you probably meant to try out other weapons, nonsense. The iron at gear shreds all the way into early planes. Absolutely shreds. And then iron sledge, you bring iron sledge into mountains, plains, and early mistlands, even though there's no mountains, plains, sledge tier, right? It doesn't exist, and yet the niche use still applies. It doesn't have any reason to use Iron Sword. However, we would totally have reason to use Iron At gear well beyond. That's because of that juicy 6 times staggering, the damage to staggering ratio of the middle mouse. I mean, that thing is brutal. With decent polearm levels, you can stagger lock a Lox with the Iron At gear. Fullings. Fulling Berserkers. No problem. 2-star Fullings. No problem. Thing is devastating and at a decent spacing range. It's wonderful. The Iron At gear is wonderful. Of course, once you're at the point making black metal, you're going to happily upgrade to black metal At gear. But if you were to introduce a mountain tier At gear, what would be skippable? The mountain tier At gear or the swamp tier At gear? The swamp tier At gear. The swamp tier At gear would be skippable in terms of the mountain tier At gear, unless the mountain tier At gear would be introduced in the frost caves. But even then, I've taken the bronze At gear into a frost cave before, and it was fine. So we have a bit of a situation where if you introduce a mountain tier At gear, suddenly your iron At gear becomes skippable. And now we have to think about, what do we do with the iron At gear? What do we buff it with? How do we make it an actual decision to make it, and not just a waste of iron? Do we give it the same Iron Sword treatment and put fire on it? Well, no, I don't think so. No. Fire doesn't work with staggering, like I mentioned earlier, so the whole crux of the At gear is staggering with its spin to win, so not as good there. So what do we do? Maybe we give it a different damage type entirely. Maybe it's not pierce at all. Maybe we make it blunt. A blunt polearm. They've existed. Who knows? That would be pretty cool. Pretty great. But that blunt polearm would eventually get outclassed by black metal At gear in most situations, and especially him in Awful and Mistlands. And so we have an interesting thing where, okay, well maybe I bring this blunt iron tier At gear into the mountains for golems. Maybe. Or maybe I go mace parry. Probably you would go blunt polearm at that point. But these are legitimate choices that you have to make, and Valheim devs love when you have to make these legitimate choices. Do I bring blunt polearm here? Or do I keep my original one to smurf on whatever mobs that aren't golems? You know? Let me know what you guys think. What do you think of the buff to Iron Sword? Do we make it Flaming Sword? What do you think about introducing a mountain tier At gear and then changing up the iron one? Let me know what you think about other skippable options and what they should be either changed, replaced with. Should we fill in the rest of the tiers? I think so. But we have to make some changes if that's the case. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys some other time. Bye!